Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. My name is Jun Kim. I'm the founder of Medical Mentor, and our mission at Medical Mentor is to empower the next generation of healthcare leaders through mentorship, a community, and meaningful conversations, just like the one we're having today with Dr. Dunn. I'm joined by our incredible panelists at Medical Mentor. We have Nicole, Mila, and Gustavo. And it is a true honor for me to welcome Dr. Ian Dunn to the Medical Mentor community today. Dr. Dunn currently serves as the Executive Dean, Chief Academic Officer, and Professor of Neurosurgery at the University of Oklahoma College of Medicine. He's an internationally recognized expert in complex skull-based and pituitary tumors. Before coming to OU, Dr. Dunn also was the director of the Center for Pituitary and Skull-Based Surgery at Brigham and Women's Hospital, as well as associate professor at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Dunn has authored over 200 peer-reviewed articles and 40 book chapters, making profound contributions to the field of neurosurgery. There's so much to admire in Dr. Dunn's distinguished career in neurosurgery. And today, we want to go beyond that and are really excited to learn what shaped him as a person, a mentor, and a leader in medicine. Dr. Don, thank you so much for being here with us today. As someone who grew up in Oklahoma, it is especially meaningful for me to have you here. I believe you have a presentation for us. The stage is yours.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you to the panelists and any audience members. It's always great to try and share a little bit of one's path and how that might be relevant to others as well. And I'll go ahead and share my screen here. Does that look okay there?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, really, as was mentioned, I currently serve as the Dean of the College of Medicine at the University of Oklahoma. And we're the flagship system for academic medicine in a whole state, which is a really unique opportunity. And very much my path here has been serendipitous, but also really inspiring and a powerful one for me. I trained I'm from a military family actually, so was born overseas, moved around quite a bit, ultimately trained in neurosurgery at a really storied place for the field at the Brigham Women's Hospital, and really where modern American neurosurgery was born from the time of Harvey Cushing over a century ago. Brigham is now part of a system called Mass General Brigham. From there, I actually spent the most important year of my professional life in a state that some of you maybe haven't visited. It's adjacent to Oklahoma, but Arkansas. And the reason it's so important was really this individual right here. And for those in the field, he needs no introduction at all, but it's Professor Osama Al-Mefdi. And one of the things that I really preach to anyone, to any mentee, to any colleague, is you really have to see excellence in your career at some point. You really have to understand what else is out there, and not only that's you can see excellence in your own domain, but really how far are you willing to travel, or how far are you willing to go to really see what is best. And when you talk about great surgeons, at least in my small corner of the world, great skull-based neurosurgeons, that really stops at Osama Al-Mefdi. So I went to Arkansas for a year. Not only did I sort of got a two for one. Not only did I see Professor Al-Mefdi, I saw the late Professor Yazergil, who just passed last month. But on the left in this screen is arguably right next to Harvey Cushing, the most influential neurosurgeon in the history of the field itself. So really, and they're both known for slightly different things, but they what they share is the common attribute of just sheer and relentless commitment to excellence. And so I think I saw and learned more in that year in Arkansas, Little Rock, than so many years before that. But it was dedication and mastery at a level that is really hard to describe. Um, when they really helped me decide or define what neurosurgery means to me. And this is just a neurosurgical specific slide, but neurosurgery does mean different things to different people. But from that year, doing really fine technical surgery meant a lot of these things. It meant seeing up close. It meant being curious, uh, being experts in anatomy and imaging, and all the things that I won't read line by line here. Um, and in italics, it means being an expert too. And so whether you're a cardiologist or you're an internal medicine physician, there is a drive to expertise that really dripped from that year. And common to all medical specialties, surgical, non-surgical. I think these two that I showed on a prior slide were really great doctors, and that was a really common thread in when I think of people who influenced me tremendously. These are quotes from them that I love from Yassergill. The more you see, the more you know, and the more you know, the more you see. And from Mefty, the more you know, the more you can do. So again, these are not restricted to neurosurgery. These are life relevant. Um, after I finished in Little Rock, I actually was honored to come back to the Harvard system as a faculty member, and there I'll just summarize that experience in a slide or two. But it was 8 years of absolute transformative experiences. And I was hired there. I don't know if they hired this role anymore, but as an instructor, which is below assistant professor, and then rose quickly to assistant professor and then to associate professor over that time. And built for a 5 to 6 year stretch, it was the busiest cranial surgical practice in Boston. And so I think for at least for neurosurgeons, yeah, obviously you want to put in practice all the things you've spent all this time learning how to do. At the same time, at an academic center, built an allied focus and scholarship. And I think regardless of what branch of medicine you're in academics, yeah, at some point, you want to be known for something, and you can't be known for everything. And so you have to choose a corner of that world that you're in, and it shouldn't be one that is chosen strategically. It should be one that's chosen by your passion and what drives you, and that will ultimately sustain you in everything. And then in that operated, published, assumed local, national, international engagement as you look to be part of what really is an international community. We've got international representation on this panel, and medicine, of course, is extraordinarily international today, and there are great things happening all over the world. If I were to summarize what has interested me in scholarship, it's really been the drivers of what develops and maintains and creates a meningioma, in particular, a specific type of brain tumor, which had been largely ignored owing to the fact that most of them are benign, but they create serious morbidity in different ways. So before 2013, really, or before 2014, what was really known about this tumor is it was driven by a single alteration in a single gene, and not a whole lot much more known about it. And you fast forward just over 10 years, and we have just such a more complicated, complex interplay and rich understanding of what drives these tumors. Most of this information is most relevant in natural history prediction, and we hope over time that this will be therapeutically much more relevant as well. There comes a time too in an academic career in particular where you're not looking to advance for advancement's sake, but the accumulation of your experiences through teaching, education, research, clinical practice. In some, there is a desire to lead that develops, and that may not be present in the beginning, but sometimes your experiences might curate and manicure that desire. And probably 6 to 7 years into being in Boston, which arguably is one of the great medical cities in the world, so why leave? You could stay there forever and enjoy what is really an incredibly rich environment. But sometimes there begins to emerge an itch to really see if you can do it on your own. Not on your own so much, but can you exist outside such an amazing system, and can you lead and develop a group? And we'd had a number of leaders in a short period of time in that environment in my training and in my faculty time. And what emerged really was a desire to lead my own team and to be a chair of neurosurgery. And I was very understanding and cognizant of the fact that to be a chair of neurosurgery would mean I would leave Boston. And that's something I was very comfortable with and had been in a few searches. And at that point, was very lucky to become the chair of neurosurgery at the University of Oklahoma. Now, a question I don't get much anymore, but I did get quite a bit at the time was like, how could you leave? Why would you leave Boston and go to Oklahoma? And in part, my experience in Little Rock was very formative, very similar environment. And these are states of great need where the ability to make an impact is really profound. And so, if you have a building part of your mentality, if you are a creator, if you want to have a fingerprint and have some influence, and really try and create positive change that's very measurable and visible, sometimes that can be more accomplishable outside of these very, very established institutions where greatness has been an expectation and a standard for several centuries. So, why does one leave? One leaves to make change and to be able to assume roles to be able to do that. So, pretty simple, actually. And actually, to be honest, the work is the work. Some of the environment looks a bit different, but it's not a foreign land. It's a place of great opportunity, and that's certainly what I found here. And I hope I'll show you that in a few slides as well. And here's what I'd start with. In 2019, this is really our team. The grayed out boxes are folks who ended up finding a different path, and I'll share sort of why that is. Um, uh, and really over a 5-year period, this is sort of what the team became. So we grew quite significantly, I'm leaving out a couple of a row and a column, didn't fit on the slide. But a leadership lesson, I'm going to go back one, is really when you lead a team or when you are engaged in a really good team, there are some really common elements. And there's this great book that is cited around the world now. It's been translated to many, many languages. It's called Good to Great. And part of what I'm going to say is going to sound really basic, but the thesis is when you're part of a great team, or if you study great teams in sports, I'm a big soccer fan, so there's Romania, Spain, and Brazil on the call. I can name 20 players from each of your countries, but in sports, in medicine, in business, in very successful organizations, it goes without saying that those organizations are defined by having great people. But those people don't just appear. They don't magically aggregate to a common magnetic pole, right? There's an active process of doing that. And there's a famous saying of getting the right people on the bus. So you think, oh, okay, piece of cake. All I got to do is find the right people. Well, it's not that easy, right? Because you also have to get the wrong people off the bus. And that is if there are people in your team that don't believe in the vision, now you're hired and you're brought in because you've shared a vision that is service oriented. And by that I mean in medicine, it's patient centered, it's learner centered, it's very humble, and you exist at the service of those around you. So if people believe that vision, you got to have a team that also espouses and subscribes to that vision. So getting the people, first of all, getting people on the bus, people you have to find people that believe in you, right? That believe in not just you, but believe in sort of this vision of growth and service. So that's one, but that's a fun thing, right? That's a positive vector. What's really hard for leaders to do, and I do in my personal experience, and just watch this in your own lives and careers, what the very best leaders do, in my experience, they're also not afraid if there is an improper match between teammates and the vision of the team. They do it professionally and they do it appropriately. And it's not discourteous and it's not cruel. But if there is a mismatch, one, those team members are already there that don't see the vision. Their career is probably best served in another team with a vision that is more consistent with their values. but it is the job of the leader to sort of find that match of adding and also subtracting. Again, one is more enjoyable, but one is also necessary. And if one can't do that, I think leadership does become more of a challenge. So in applying some of these sort of principles, we're able to grow this team of just incredible people, and we recruited from around the country and around the world. And you might recognize these as some of the great healthcare institutions in the United States and beyond, Toronto and other places. We've got some folks that have trained abroad as well, and one might think, well, boy, it must be really hard to attract people from California to Oklahoma. Not hard, not as hard as you think. It turns out there is a not immaterial cohort of people that want to be part of a team that is looking to always be better, do better, serve better, and be creative in how they can serve the world. And sometimes that's done in Oklahoma. Sometimes it's done in New York. Sometimes it's done in Romania. But that notion of positive leadership and having fun while you're doing it, has defined at least my time with our team. Now I've transitioned out of the chair of neurosurgery role, but was absolutely very proud of the team that we developed. And I can tell you that the experience our trainees and residents get and our students get, I do believe is second to none at this point. I wouldn't have said that several years ago, but we can feel very proud of our students when they go to various residency, either that they stay here or to go to various residency programs across the country. They will be very well prepared. Residents taking faculty roles and fellowship roles will slot in seamlessly. And faculty that join us will have the same opportunities to advance their careers and be internationally and nationally visible as they would at programs that are more reputationally well known. And so, these are some of the things that as I would lead faculty meetings, that began to be really important to me. And you may look at these five things and say, like, oh my gosh, this is hardly atom splitting. But when you're leading a group of people, of course, you want people to be there, right? So you want people to be present. And we would have these very, very minor ground rules that we'd all agreed upon. Hey, how can you really be part of this team if you're not here? How can you play as a striker if you're like not here? In other words, right? So let's agree that we should be present together in certain moments, right? But being present, it turns out that's just the first tier. You also want people to be engaged. And you all probably know what engagement looks like and feels like. Engagement doesn't look like doom scrolling. It looks like your body language is forward leaning. You're engaging in eye contact. You may be asking questions or answering questions. We all know what engagement looks like. So we asked of our team, can we agree that being present is important? If I want to hear you and your voice, if you want to hear my voice, if we want to all do this together, we got to be present. If we're really going to maximize that presence together, let's all resolve to be engaged. And that's also me, right? That's also the leader. Like I need to create material and create a construct that is worth people being present for and that is worth engaging in. So there's certainly a lot of responsibility on the organizer. It is so critical, and this is not just a chair comment or a dean comment or a leader comment, because we're all leading in all facets of our life from day one. Medical students are leading, right? Interns are leading. And the US Navy has a great saying, which is you never know when you'll be asked to lead. And so it follows that we're leading in every facet of our lives. But when you're in a group and you're trying to attack something challenging or you're trying to grow in a different way, you really want people to not be negative all the time. And it's so easy to be negative, right? I want it to be 70 degrees and it's only 65 degrees. I mean, we can criticize everything, but a really good team resolves to begin discussions and really have hard discussions, either with an emotional baseline of neutrality or even positivity. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be inappropriately cheerleaderish, but that your demeanor and your posture is one of these two things. And that is something that, look, I'm not perfect. I don't bat 1,000 in this domain, but it's so that third point I cannot emphasize enough. You want to have the meeting in the room. So when what I mean is, if we're discussing difficult topics or ways to grow or ways to improve or ways to be better, and that could be in a group of medical students, it could be a group of residents. You know, if you have something to say it in the meeting. Don't call your friend 30 minutes later and have some water cooler discussion and tear it down. and expressed an opinion that was discordant with what we all just agreed upon in the meeting because we were engaged, because we were present. And I can't tell you how important that is for my experience in leadership. And I think you have to, number five, I think, is just a sign of professionalism. And it really separates great teams from sort of average teams. Be confidential when necessary. There's information that is sensitive, whether it's how someone's doing or a critical topic that you really want to be able to talk with others about and not just talk in an echo chamber. And so you need a sounding board, you need a kitchen cabinet, so to speak. And those people have to know, and you've got to know as a leader when to be confidential. And I'll tell you, in my professional life, there are people that, just to flip this around, if I want something to be shared widely, I'll call somebody up, specific people up, and share something with them, fully well knowing that they will then share that widely. But you got to know in your team who can be confidential and who can't. When I was leading the Department of Neurosurgery, we had a significant faculty expansion. We had a really significant expansion of our operative volume and ambulatory volume. We had a real focus on quality. We created really positive relationships with around the state of Oklahoma, other health systems, and also our Veterans Administration, which is the system of care set up by the government to take care of active and retired military personnel. And it's a national network. We expanded our residency program to sort of reach more learners and train more learners. There's a system that ranks organizations, either colleges of medicine or departments, by how much funding you have, research funding by the National Institutes of Health, now ranked in the top 25 in that. But I'd say, if I were to say it doesn't go in a CV, what was the most important accomplishment of which I am most proud? It's really the cultural transformation that we brought about, and that is we really developed a winning sort of can-do, patient, learner-centered, curious, engaged culture. And when you have that, anything is possible. When you don't have it, a lot of things are impossible. So again, you can't walk into a room and say, okay, today we're going to change our culture. It's brick by brick, step by step. It's also action by action, right? These are not stroke of the pen initiatives. These are what you model as a leader each and every day. And again, I don't want to paint the picture of perfection, that this was a linear process that rolled out exactly as was planned day by day, but this is the sum total of that journey. From there, I was chair for 5.5 years, and being a chair of a department is just an absolutely spectacular job in medicine, specifically in American medicine, which is what I know best. I loved every minute of that, and it will remain probably the most favorite role I will occupy because of your ability to make so much obvious change each and every day in a team that is doing such hard work. But I was asked to then serve as the dean of the medical school and then head of our physician group. And also, I also interact as an executive officer of our whole university system. So we interact with the president of the university and so forth. And so I'll talk just a little bit about that. But one thing I would just emphasize is what has remained most important to me is to be a clinically active physician. So really the only point I need when I was asked to consider the role of dean, and dean is a really prestigious role in most systems, and I was honored to be asked to consider that. But I didn't negotiate salary. I didn't negotiate 1,000 things. I said, hey, I just want to let you guys know I still want to be a neurosurgeon. And they were like, okay. So that was really my grand negotiation strategy. But that's what I cared about most to preserve. We have several hundred deans in the United States. 6 of them now are neurosurgeons. And one of my jobs now is to elevate the entire College of Medicine and medicine in a university setting. Here's our university president, great leader, statewide, and we've been successful enough to, in the new university strategic plan, not that I only prioritize neuroscience, but we will be establishing a neuroscience center and obtaining a lead gift. So we've been able to get on the radar of our biggest leaders in the system. And so this will be the end of my formal prepared remarks, but what have I learned? Leaders that I really wish to emulate and respect, they set the vision and the tone. You sort of know what they stand for. You know what's going to be important to them. And what's important to them is not just important to them individually. It's an amalgamation of observations they've made about their environment and they've set the vision and tone of what should be important. I think it's important to prioritize humility and find areas of maximum impact to those around you. You want to create a cultural framework for success. And one of the things I do believe is you are what you tolerate. If you tolerate a disgruntled employee who's toxic, if you tolerate corner cutting, if you tolerate making exceptions for others, that's just the culture that you'll breed. And so you've got to be really, really disciplined about some of those issues that can be really hard. But things that happen in your organization are a reflection of a leader. And so you have to be really mindful of that. Um, it is really all about the people, not just the chairs and the big leaders, but it's everybody. And you got to recognize everybody, know everybody, and have a really consistent approach to everybody around you. And I would say ultimately the leader is responsible, for better or for worse. The leader is responsible for all the missions around him or her. And I like to say that you got to be able to zoom in and zoom out. What I mean by that is if there's a critical problem in your area, sometimes you can't delegate all of that. You've got to get dropped down to that atomic level and really dig into a problem, even if it's not in your personal area of expertise. But most of the time, you need to be able to zoom out and you need to be looking at your team and your organization at a much higher level, understanding that you have empowered leaders at levels that are responsible for more core areas whose job is to zoom in every day. So I'll just pause there. I have to end by showing a couple of iconic pictures of our great state, which is the Oklahoma Thunder. Oklahoma City Thunder won the NBA championship not long ago, and this is just one of the greatest pictures that I'll remember. So 30 years ago, there was an incredible domestic terrorist incident rather in Oklahoma City that claimed the lives of over 160 people. And this black structure is the archway of that memorial. And this bus, this is the championship parade after 30 years later, after the NBA finals. And the NBA MVP, SGA, is arms outstretched in the center of the picture on top of the bus. And this is a total mistake or just coincidence. It's also bus number 30, which was not intentional, but marks the 30th anniversary of the memorial. And Oklahoma City, incredible place. We'll be hosting a couple of events in the LA Olympics, and I'll stop sharing from there. And happy to answer any other questions or expand on any of those topics.
Professor, thank you for your presentation. It was very good to have the NBA references. And as the first question, I was really interested in your military background. Growing up in a military family often still values like structure, resilience, and service. How have those influences manifested in your professional journey and your approach in your surgery?
Great question. So I haven't served personally, but my brother is a reservist. All of my family has served, and that was initially my personal desire. I was to serve. Whatever reason, it didn't turn out that way. But medicine is very similar to the military in that way. Like you're living a life of service. Now, I don't, we serve each patient each and every day, and that's how we serve. But there's a lot of commonalities and similarities. Discipline, like you really can't get through this medical journey without some. If you have no discipline, it's really hard to do this, I think. But discipline's a bit different. But I think there's a selfless service that binds these two disciplines for sure. And I think you do a lot of things unnoticed. So I don't think officers and soldiers are congratulated every day for taking risks and serving, no matter what country you're serving. Likewise, we don't serve in medicine to be thanked every day, right? It's something that you do because it's right. You're driven to do it, and frankly, what is golden feedback from patients is a thank you, right? I mean that's incredible, but that's not why you're not driven to serve because of the daily adulation you receive. Lots of work in the shadows, lots of work that goes on behind closed doors, and when the lights are out, in service of patients, the same way that soldiers do that for our country.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dunn. There is a lot to take away from what you shared today. So, as Dean of the College of Medicine, how do you approach identifying and fostering the next generation of neurosurgical leaders?
I missed just a part of that question. I'm sorry.
Okay, I can say, how do you approach identifying and fostering the next generation of neurosurgical
Oh,
leaders?
sure. That's a great question. First of all, I think more broadly, this notion of talent identification is really important. And I think that starts really early on. Like I start looking at talent like at a medical student level. And so you really want to be available because you want these would-be leaders or what we call these high-performing individuals to be excited each step, right? So being available is important. So even as a undergraduate students or first year medical students, like if someone is able to set up a meeting with me, now he or she may think it's like I'm just being a really nice guy, and I am. But it's also really intentional, right? Like it's strategic for me to actually create these relationships with the people that I think will be successful so that they know what that looks like and feels like. In residency, for sure, very similar. I mean, you want to treat the residents really professionally so that you excite them about what academics looks like, which is where a lot of our leadership takes place. And at the faculty level, it's really about giving faculty lots of opportunities to certainly when I was chair of neurosurgery, it's about giving faculty as many opportunities to develop as possible. And then, in a group of, let's say, 20 faculty, not everyone's going to rise and develop in the same way, and then they begin to identify themselves. At the dean level, and this wasn't sort of planned like that, but as chair, what I do encourage all of our other chairs to do, chairs of surgery, chairs of orthopedics, is actually develop soft succession plans in the department. Like you should have a plan for if something happens, like you need to be developing leaders in your department. And that's what really great companies do. And they do what's called talent identification or talent reviews or succession planning. Like every elite company in the world does this. Elite military unit, and they identify very, very strategically who is next in line to be a leader in these areas. And so we do that now in the College of Medicine, not just in neurosurgery, but in all the departments. And I do think the very best departments have ready leaders that are being developed inside of them.
Thank you so much.
In fact, Camille, I'd go so far as to say, if that's not the case, it's maybe more of a reflection of the leader, right? Because if the department has a really dominant alpha leader and lots of folks who are much lower on the scale of authority and responsibility, there's a chance that that was intentional, right? And that person really wanted to aggregate and consolidate authority. So to me, what I'm really impressed by leaders who you look at the team and it's like a lot of really strong people around him or her. And that's intentional, right? And that's to say, look, I think we're going to be best if it's not just me, but if it's people that are extraordinarily competent. And the very best chairs of neurosurgery do that too. You look at their departments and you look at like there are two or three people who could be chairs there or somewhere else. So I do think that development is highly, highly intentional and highly engaged.
Thank you.
So my next question is kind of a follow-up on what we were discussing earlier about students perhaps approaching you to set up meetings with you and how that should be intentional. So my question for you is, what are the most common mistakes you see young neurosurgeons or medical students make when approaching mentors, and how could they do that better?
That's just such a good question. And some of what I'm going to say is going to sound like I'm 300 years old, but one of the things I would say is that mentorship's a two-way street. And I feel very strongly about that. So my most successful mentorship experiences are ones where, I mean, so what is my job as a mentor? In part, it's to provide opportunity. It's also provide guidance and honestly, like a portal to another world that if the right steps are taken, that person can enter if they wish to do so. And so that's a big responsibility. On the other hand, The job of the mentee is to do some of that work, right? And so I think when the mentee or perhaps the student has the expectation that the mentor is just going to do everything, I think that's a mistake. And I think that will wear out a mentor real fast. And for me, like given my portfolio activity, I really don't have the scope to do that, to like kind of do 99% of the work. Now, I'm not saying it has to be 50-50 because there's each different initiative or engagement of a student and a mentor may be a different ratio of activity of mentor-mentee, right? So first draft of something, that might be like 70% mentee, 30% mentor. Final draft, that may end up being 90% mentor, 10%. But so each of those steps may vary with the ratio of activity. I think the first meeting, I really think the student should look professional. When a student rolls in with slides and a t-shirt untucked and jeans, it's just not a good look. And look, that may be how they appear after the fifth meeting. That's okay. But like if I'm meeting with the president for the first time, I don't dress like this. Like even if I'm coming out of surgery, I'm very fast putting a suit on so I look professional. So I don't want to dismiss the professionalism piece. It's important, and I think it sets a tone. It doesn't mean you have to look a certain way. Professional, but I think we all know what looking professional means, and I don't want to overemphasize that. I also don't want to take. I think it just looks like, hey, I cared about this meeting, this first meeting especially, and now what I often do if someone shows up in a suit and tie, I say, hey, look, appreciate you looking professional. No need to wear a tie next time. And you take the temperature down, but you note that someone was interested enough to look professional. I think also, Nicole, I think the preparation piece, like if you're meeting somebody for the first time, never come without something. Never. Never walk in with your hands in your pockets. Hey, what's up? Have your CV, have something and especially if it's a first meeting, right? Maybe you send it to me over email and electronically. Still bring a hard copy. It's just professional. I never walk into a meeting with anybody at my level, another chair. I never walk into a meeting with students without something in my hand, a folder, something I can refer to if the meeting goes sideways and I want to bring up another point or what have you. Or maybe it's a reminder of who exactly some biographical piece of information of the person I'm meeting. But don't ever walk into a meeting, especially as a mentee, just with your hands in your pockets and your backpack over your shoulder. Like have something that relates to what you're doing. And the other thing I would say is be responsive. So there are folks that I've emailed, like students, that like may not respond for 5 days, and that's to me confusing. I think if someone at a vertically higher, I think this is how life works. I'm not saying this is the law of nature, but like if somebody above me emails me, like I believe it is my responsibility to reply. Yeah, there's mitigating circumstances, right? But probably 24 to 48 hours, like absolute max. And so I think that's important too, just responsiveness. That being said, I would definitely encourage any student should never be afraid or reluctant to email anybody. I'm always really impressed when students email. I have this sort of open policy, but not a lot of people use it. I think they assume that I won't respond or I won't be available. But when students do email, we'll get time together and like frankly, like I may enjoy it more than they do. But I also would encourage students to be bold, take a chance, take a risk on engaging with layers of leadership that they may think may be inaccessible, but usually are.
Doctor, you made a significant transition when you left Boston to join and help the neurosurgery program at Oklahoma. Can you walk us through that decision and what were the core motivations and what aspects of this opportunity made you feel that it was the right next step?
Sure. Yeah. As I mentioned before, Boston, Oklahoma seems an unlikely trajectory, but you know, fundamentally, after 6 to 7 years as a faculty member, and I would preface this by saying, Boston is just an incredible. Like my kids were born there. I did my residency there. I left like a material amount of like my life, energy, and sweat equity in the operating rooms and halls of that place. So and now my brother's there, and I just love the place. But I wanted to be a chair of a department, and you have a decision to make at that point. And my kids are really young; they were movable. I married my medical school classmate who we met on the first day of medical school. So it was really important that there was something there was something materially available for her to advance to, and that just adds a little bit of complexity to these processes. But I wanted to be a chair, and not to say I was a chair, but I wanted to engage in the activities in which chairs engage, and that is program building, learner and faculty development, building a research program, just building a really multidimensional clinical academic unit that could have influence in a region. And the decision is pretty easy. Like I could stay in Boston and maybe wait like 20 more years, or I could um, pursue an opportunity at a different institution. And I think it can be really hard I mean, these places, right? These like places that are kind of at the far end of the spectrum, they're hard to leave. No doubt. The kind of like Hopkins, the Harvards, no doubt. But I had spent time in Little Rock at the University of Arkansas for fellowship, where I saw the very best cranial neurosurgery in the history of the field. No doubt. That was not Hopkins. That was at Arkansas. So, the ability to create something really special, I knew was not only restricted to a couple of coastal elites. I knew that was possible. I mean, there's phenomenal neurosurgery in Spain. There's unbelievable neurosurgery in Brazil, similarly in Romania, around the world. There's an international community of truly gifted scholars and surgeons. And I like I take what I learned in Boston with me each day, but I've had really formative experiences outside of Boston too. And so honestly, the decision was not difficult. When I was leaving, I actually drove out well before my family, and figuratively or literally, Boston was in my rearview mirror. There's never a single day where I've said, boy, what a mistake. I mean, then you take ultimate responsibility on your own. Like, am I going to make this work? Because I'm at an institution that does not have all the billion-dollar trappings of Boston, am I helpless, or can I find my way in a place that's brand new? So it does ask a lot of the leader too. Like it asks a lot of you as a person and your ability to create a new life and a new world for yourself and for your, most important, not for you, but for your patients, and really like add value to a new organization.
And have you always seen yourself as a leader, or was that a
No.
role that developed organically?
There are people that I remember, even back in elementary school, like you just like there's class president, and in junior high and high school, they're like captain of every team, and they're just like homecoming king or queen, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like what a gifted, just innate set of attributes that these people have. I didn't always view myself as that, but I would say, and business school libraries are full of books that say this. Uh, well, look, I love soccer. So for every Lionel Messi out there, you've got many, many, many others that through dedication and commitment and self-improvement become professional, right? So leadership's no different. If you think about what it means to be in a team, how to drive the team forward, and if you're willing to learn and learn from those around you, and be open to maybe manicuring and rounding off parts of your leadership profile. And if you're really curious about it, really anybody can be a leader. But I think there's some core values that no matter what so personality and leadership, I think, are different. And I think multiple different kinds of personalities can be leaders. Some can be just naturally Clintonian, Bill Clinton-esque, like it's just oozes from their pores. And then you have some that appear more awkward, but nevertheless are quiet but do it in a way that is equally, if not more effective. So don't confuse. One lesson I would have for everybody: gregariousness, extroversion, they're not proxies for leadership. They can be additive, but they're not always proxies. Piper.
Hi, Dr. Dunn. Thanks so much for speaking with us. I'm Piper Tingleaf, and I'm actually a first-year medical student at OU, College of Medicine, which is so exciting. I actually grew up here, but lived in Boston for 5 years, getting my undergrad and graduate degree. And so I understand, as hard as it was to leave there, I'm super happy to be back in Oklahoma. So I worked in Dr. Key Park's lab last year at the program of global surgery and social change. And my horizons expanded tenfold on global health and the disparate needs there, especially neurosurgery. And I know you spoke at the second Yasser microsurgery
Yeah.
conference in April, where the Boston Declaration took place. And I was just wondering, how do you envision OU College of Medicine's neurosurgical department or the College of Medicine's future in general and the landscape of global neurosurgery, global surgery, where there's a huge unmet need?
First of all, great to meet you. And I love the Boston, Oklahoma axis. We lived just in Newton for several years, which we loved.
That's awesome.
But one thing I would say is, if you look at the proportional representation of neurosurgery, and you probably got a lot of that from the meeting, but so Ali Sultan is a great friend and colleague of mine, as are a lot of those leaders. It is just stunning. Like, there'll be whole regions with like one neurosurgeon, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's absolutely unbelievable. But in parallel, I would also raise the notion of disparity even in the U.S.
Mhm.
And I mean, Boston is a great example of an absolute embarrassment of riches. I used to say you could throw a baseball and hit like 10 neurosurgeons in the head on a street corner. On the other hand, we've got tremendous challenges in access to key services in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And so, we're 49th in health outcomes in nationally. We're 48th in the number of physicians per capita. And one of the things that I took really seriously when I started as chair in 2019 was we just looked internally and said, are we at minimum, are we offering comprehensive clinical services to the state of Oklahoma as tier one? And the answer was no. So very committedly, and then we had this narrative that we can't recruit to Oklahoma, and we just turned that on and said that is complete BS. If you are eager enough, look, if we can recruit a five-star blue chip quarterback to Norman, we can recruit a neurosurgeon to Oklahoma, right?
100%.
So then so we had these different tiers of how we built, but tier one was like, do we at least have all the bases covered? But then this is a long-winded way of saying, so then the team, as you shape the team and develop the team and bring in people that are like-minded, not like, but like-minded. That's an important distinction, right? People can be really, really different, but they do have to have a similarity in thinking of how they see the future. Then we began to develop a team of service, and where that was important. Serving patients. Look, serving the faculty is important, serving the doctors is important. But look, number one, our constituents are our patients and learners. So we had to create a little bit more humility in the team. I think now the team is big enough. When I look back look at the team now, there is a lot of enthusiasm for global neurosurgery in the team. But I think before we got to that point where we could think about that, we had to develop a culture of service here, service to the metro, service to an ever expanding radii of patients. And that's there now. So, there are pockets of interest in global health at OU. And I think we'll see more of that as that culture of service continues to mature and develop.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So, Dr. Dunn, I imagine that balancing mentorship with the demands of clinical care, research, and leadership can be incredibly challenging. How have you managed to maintain that balance in your own career, but also with your personal life?
Yeah, no, great question. One of the things that I've come to understand is that you really can't say very widely, I don't have time for X. You can say it to like a really small group of people that are in your inner sanctum, but you can't be seen or heard to say that widely. because you're sort of saying, hey, these other things that are different from what you're asking me to do are more important, right? No one wants to hear that. So I really do try to attend absolutely everything I can. And I will answer most emails unless I just happen to miss something. And I will say, I do think the higher we go in the chain, not that it's all vertical, but the more available we have to be. And I really am a big proponent of being available as a leader. And so now, what I will say, and I think this is a more realistic answer to the question, is I may not be able to provide the as close a hands-on degree of mentoring as someone may need. So at that point, you can create different layers of mentorship, right? You can say, hey, I really want to be part of your development. I think to give you what you need each day, I'm going to bring in another team member or two. And I think that that sort of satisfies everybody. One, the leader stays involved, and maybe that satisfies the person who's wanted to engage you in the first place. And B, you've been really clear about, if I think you maybe need more than what I can, do each day, and you're not saying no, you're creating and proposing, a complementary and probably additive scenario. So the answer can never be no. Um, to people who want to be part of your sphere. It's always a yes. And I think sometimes you just have to manicure that yes a little bit to be practical. I will just add to that. When I became chair and then I became dean, to people in immediate layers of authority around me, I have learned to be respectful of, for instance, when I email. And there's a schedule send option, right? And I never used to use that. And implicitly, like some people, when they receive that communication, are like, man, is he expecting me to reply like at 1 a.m. when he sent, or like it's like a Sunday morning? Like, is that okay? So there are certain people who I'll say like, hey, I expect like in the positions we occupy, and these are the higher level positions, we're really always available. And like if the president calls or the CEO of the hospital calls, I'm never going to have some out of office reply on, right? But that's not for everybody. And so to make it clear to everybody, I'm not asking people to be on the clock 24/7. For instance, I'll schedule my communications to be done during certain hours where it's a bit more humane for them. Now, look, I'm going to check all the time, but like it's 2025. And so just last night, like I had like 20 emails all keyed up that like 5 years ago, I would have sent right then. And now like they were scheduled to be sent like in a kind of a cadence, like starting at 7 today. So, or like that was Sunday to Monday. So it doesn't sound like a big deal, but people may feel like their privacy or family time, as you mentioned, is a little bit less violated.
Guys, we are almost about to end our webinar, unfortunately. Nicole, feel free to open your mic.
Thank you so much for having this interview. Nice to meet you all, and Dr. Dunn. My name is Nicole. I am from Bolivia. I am IMG. And I have some questions. What advice, doctor, you can give me? Like an IMG. Currently, I am doing some courses about neuroscience, about statics, and a little about programming. But I don't know how to break the barrier, the wall between IMG with the health system in United States.
Yeah,
And
great
what
question.
advice?
Actually, I've actually been pretty involved in this. So when I was reviewing my first batch of resident applicants as chair, I noticed we didn't have any applicants who hadn't done medical school outside the US. So I went to our team and said, hey, do we look at any international medical graduates? Like, oh, no, we don't do that here. So I reversed that and we began to evaluate international medical graduates. And then that year we matched, actually, he's now a PGY6. So that year we matched an applicant who had done medical school overseas and has been like an absolutely phenomenal resident. Amazing. So, and actually, Oklahoma, Nicole, you may want to pay attention to this. there are an increasing number of states who are passing legislation that don't require any U.S. medical training for international medical graduates to obtain medical licensure. So we actually, with tremendous legislative support, we introduced that legislation in this past cycle. It was just signed into law in the spring, and it will go into law November 1st. And so again, just to repeat, a lot of states require, if someone's trained, let's say in Bolivia, you got to come to the U.S. and kind of redo a lot of stuff, and it's a big production. Because we are short on physicians and there's only so many we can train, we've said, hey, there are probably really great physicians who have trained in other systems outside the United States. And then we have a series of competency assessment requirements that are part of this. But if someone meets those, they're eligible for a provisional license in our state for 3 years, provided they're working at our academic health system. And if the 3 years goes well, they're eligible to apply for a full license in the state. So that's a really big deal. So one piece of advice I would have for you is look at those states.
Thanks so much,
Thank you.
Doctor. True pleasure to have you. Thank you, Nicole, for the question. Thank you all for coming. And yeah, thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate being on the panel, and honored to be part of this. And I think what you're doing is fantastic, and hopefully there'll be a forum where people can dig back to these archives for years to come.
Thank you, Dr. Dunn. Thank you everyone for joining.